UFC 317, a battle of legacy versus retribution. Ilia Topuria is looking to do something you can consider to be phenomenal in what many would consider a little bit of a lackluster start to the 2025 UFC calendar year. Events haven't been as big as we want them to be, not as many finishes. The era of the double champ looks like it has come and gone, but the era of the two-division champ is still here. And Ilia Topuria is looking to gain his second championship in the lightweight division against Bronx Charles Oliveira, who's looking to reclaim gold. Folks, welcome back to another episode of the Bloody Water Podcast. Breaking it down with me, as always, the Santa Fe bomber, the New Mexico native. AJ, again, storylines are here. Oliveira wants his gold back, but I do gotta ask you, he's a little bit of a UFC cash cow, if you will. The man's got the most performance bonuses in company history with 20. He's amassed over $1 million in bonus money right there. Does he still have that hunger to reclaim that championship that's vacant in the lightweight division?
That's a great question, Derick, because I feel like it's all going to be put in place here this Saturday, because if he doesn't, I mean, Ilia Topuria is going to put on another show like we've seen him, man. People are naming him the GOAT killer out there. Charles Bronx is absolutely one of the GOATs, and if that hunger isn't there, I could see him being a serious disadvantage going forward.
Yeah, coming off the backs of two knockouts against some legends, Volkanovski and Holloway, it looks like Topuria is fighting for something larger. Again, that legacy. But the man from the favelas, Bronx, right? You just got to question. You get the strap again, then what? Is it a long title defense? Is it a reign that you're looking for? Or is it just saying, I want back what was mine? The thing that I lost, the thing I've reclaimed. We'll see. We'll talk about it. We got some championship gold on deck. Let's not forget Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. But before we do that, folks, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. UFC Baku Recap. Just a couple quick notes. First off, AJ, you won the week. It was a swing week. One contentious pick, if you will. Rafael Fiziev defeated Ignacio Bahamondes. I want your thoughts on that before we talk about the main event right there. Fiziev did the things that everybody actually said that he would. I was doubting him. I thought that Bahamondes would have a little bit of a different approach, a different strategy instead of just kickboxing with a master at that discipline right there. What did you think of the fight?
Man, sometimes what I feel like happened, Derick, is sometimes when you're in there, right, with one of the greats that is so good at his particular sport, you're thinking like, okay, maybe I'm going to try some things out. I'm going to see how I fare against it. And next thing you know, you're just staring down the pipe. You're trying to overanalyze the situations going on. I think that had a little bit to go into what Bahamondes was experiencing, because you're right. Fiziev did what Fiziev does, and he put on absolute class. I mean, you're kickboxing with a kickboxer, nonetheless a guy who coaches kickboxing. It's hard to provide something that he's never seen before.
Yeah, I mean, Fiziev said, he's like, I'm not losing at home, brother. It's just not going to happen right here. He did bring out a little bit of that wrestling like I was talking about, but that was not the biggest storyline. Yes, Bahamondes got some experience, and he'll definitely be a player in the division. But Khalil Rountree, the man has definitely put himself in a position in what is a shallow light heavyweight division right now. Back in somewhat of a title contention, Dana White even said it himself, with a very one-sided victory over Jamal Hill. Now, I asked you, AJ, are we getting lulled into kind of like a Kamaru Usman-esque trap right here where everybody's going Roundtree, but Jamal Hill's the former champion. He should be able to show the people what's going on. Obviously, coming off of an Achilles injury, coming off of a meniscus tear that delayed this fight from the original date. But Khalil Rountree just looked like the better fighter, more patient fighter, more technical fighter. And the footwork of Jamal Hill was to his detriment again. He got ate up by those leg kicks, and that was kind of all she wrote. That was literally the whole entire game plan. It just took away his mobility, and the fight was pretty much over. How'd you see it?
Exactly the same, Derick. One of the things I liked most that you highlighted was the patience Khalil Rountree exposed, right? Like you said, chopping down the tree, find your way to work. Don't rush in, because we know Jamal has that crazy explosive power. He can knock you out at any single time. I love the way Rountree showed a lot of veteran poise and experience right there, and I'm happy that at least Uncle Dana is giving him the recognition he needs. He might be on the chance for a title shot.
But some would still call it a lackluster main event, in which was overall a lackluster just card right here. Yeah, you went to Azerbaijan, you went to Baku for the first time. We're trying to bring some life back into this 2025 MMA calendar here. But you talk to me, man. Do you agree with the consensus of what a lot of, at least people online, are saying, where the UFC is becoming a little bit of a stale product in terms of biggest fights aren't being made. A lot of people who maybe aren't particularly UFC caliber coming up from the Dana White Contender Series or just getting signed short notice for whatever reason. They're just being brought up. We're seeing a ton of decisions. I believe on that card for the UFC Baku card, it was majority decisions. There's only a couple finishes there. Do you agree with that, or is this just a lull in the action?
I mean, I can see where the notion is out there, Derek, because I agree with you, right? There's a lot of truths of what you said, but it all does come down to how you're looking at things. I don't necessarily think the UFC is in this lull of we just don't have the right fighters in the right places. A lot of the times there's contract things going on, injuries, things going on behind the scenes that we're not always made weary of or made aware of. Even on a betting show, we'd like to have the background knowledge. It's not always the case, but having that being said, I still think there is a quality what the UFC is doing. Personally, though, I do think having the every single week, having the non-big events is kind of putting a detriment to there, because a lot of people get excited to watch. Like, oh, it's a UFC fight. Oh, it's just it's a fight night. Yeah, don't really care. So I can see where a lot of people lose interest in that aspect.
I would say maybe it's just the compounding effect, the long-term horizon nobody saw when the ESPN deal came about, right? I mean, UFC wasn't every week for a long time, right? You'd get a couple shows over the span of a couple of months or whatever the case may be, a little bit more stacked, but it is what it is right here. One last note on Baku right here. Let's give it up. Nazim Sadikov versus Nicholas Mota. That was the banger of the night that we all predicted right here. Sadikov got that second round TKO victory. They got $100K each, all the bonus money. Dana White was like, I'm gonna give y'all all the bonus money because nobody else showed up and showed out the way that you guys did. So that don't got to break it down or anything crazy like that, but that was definitely a banger. And those are the fights that we want to see. We get more of those right there. Nobody's complaining, right?
Absolutely, right? That's everybody wants and everybody loves a blood and guts fighter. It's hard to go out there and actually do that when you're the one in the trunks in the cage. But man, I'm glad Uncle Dana rewards exactly what the people want to see, because at the end of the day, as much as we don't like it, it is an entertainment business.
That's fair. All right, folks. So again, AJ won the week. 5-2 was the overall record right there. I went 4-2. The swing pick was Rafael Fiziev, Ignacio Bahamondes. But on to UFC 317 right here. Before we jump into the main card, before we give all our picks, our breakdowns, the props, the whole entire nine, AJ, you're going to lead us off with the sleeper, not just a main card fight that people need to tune into, because that's a pay-per-view right there. We're talking about the free portion. We want to know the one fight on the card where you could tune in and have guaranteed violence, guaranteed entertainment, and again, a time of uncertainty when it comes down to that thing. Talk to him, brother. What do you got?
It's time for some fight night.
If you ain't paying attention, you're gonna sleep on me and I'm gonna wake you up.
A time of uncertainty, and you were saying it before, we're bringing some new people in, short notice, whatever the case is. This is exactly one of those fights, folks, but this is one of those fights you need to pay attention to. We have some very, very exciting prospects facing each other in the middleweight division. We're talking about Chris Ewert. Sorry if I butchered it, Chris. Either way, versus Jackson McVeigh, man. Ewert is taking this fight on short notice, but we say it all the time. You need to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And when Uncle Dana calls you to fight on a card, nonetheless a pay-per-view, you better be ready, all right? Ewert has very, very technical hands right here. Likes to play the distance game and do some damage and avoid being hit. McVeigh, long, lanky, who likes to stay on the front foot, continuously keep that pressure up, utilize the clinch, and absolutely do damage when you get inside his range. This should be a very, very fun fight right here, folks. 11 combined finishes between the two of them. Both fighters are undefeated, where McVeigh has a nice mix of KO submissions. I believe it's 3-3. And then Ewert likes to get in there, get things done with his hands. Both of them like to hit hard. Very, very scrappy. Don't blink, folks. And in fact, tune in early, because this is the first fight on the prelims, on the early prelims. So make sure you tune in early. Don't blink. And make sure you watch this one.
This is one of, I believe, 6 undefeated fighters. One matchup that had about 6 undefeated fighters total on the card right here. So you have to ask, the last time, I think in 2025 specifically, undefeated fighters have not been treated very well. Undefeated fighters have been losing their O's very frequently here. So somebody's O has to go, and definitely it has to be one of these Ewert or McVeigh right here. But that's going to be a banger right there. Folks, let's not mince any words. Let's jump straight into the main event, the championship event.
Here's to another main card breakdown, courtesy of your hosts, Derick G and AJ.
Vacant lightweight championship right here between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. Who's the side right here? It's uncertainty. All you're hearing is narratives. All you're hearing is stories. On one hand, Topuria walks in and knocks out Oliveira like it's nothing. On the other hand, Oliveira's too big. Look at the size discrepancy. His jiu-jitsu is too sick. Who's the side right here that you are favoring? Who's the A? Who's the B truly in this matchup?
Truly in this matchup, Derek, I have to go with Ilia Topuria, especially because of the momentum he's carrying into these fights. Like you said, right? Charles Oliveira has the X factors on paper, and nonetheless, the #1 submission in the UFC. Like, this guy has all the accolades going for him. But sometimes when you're riding that high, you're the guy, man, you just keep on rolling. And that's what a lot of what Ilia Topuria has been doing. He's put a lot of fear into people, but I agree with you. He's fighting a bigger, stronger, faster guy now, and in an actual weight class where he belongs. This should be a very, very interesting one.
What do you like about Topuria in this matchup?
Oh man, fast all around, insane power, likes heavy hands, great pressure. What I like most about Topuria is the way he's able to evolve his game for each and every single opponent, right? If he's fighting a crazy striker, he's going to look to mix it up and then shoot to the ground, get this fight where he needs to be. I don't imagine that happening with Do Bronx. I imagine pressure, hands, dip out, try to create an opportunity where Oliveira gets flustered. But the way he's able to tailor his game is one of the things that makes him a very impactful fighter in the UFC.
One of the things that I want to bring up right here is just taking a look at some of the numbers in between both of these fighters right here. The biggest thing is just people talk about the frame of Charles Oliveira right here. He's taller, 3-inch height advantage, 5-inch reach advantage right here. People are saying that as if Ilia Topuria didn't just fight Max Holloway, right? Who was taller. They did. Ironically, I actually had to go back to look this up. They had the same reach right here. I believe it was, that 69-inch reach for both fighters. So massive reach advantage for Oliveira, who does like to throw those straight shots down the pipe. Big hooks, but also loves to throw the straight shots. The thing that really interests me right here is when he fought Jai Herbert was 6'1". I was rewatching that fight here today, and he was getting tagged up, man. I mean, Herbert's a slick boxer, and he was putting some work on Ilia Topuria. Charles Oliveira is not the same level of boxer, but there is one thing in particular that I think Topuria does very, very well against a fighter like Charles Oliveira, really any of them, is false entries and bringing out reads. He makes reads in the first round, steps it up a little bit in the second round, but brings out these reads because he doesn't really use a jab. AJ, have you noticed there's kind of a lack of a jab in Topuria's game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he has snappy combos. He likes to land the 1-2, but it really is, like you said, a lot of the backhand reading things, trying to counter.
So one of the things that Jai Herbert did a lot, you could even say for a Max Holloway, not really as much Max Holloway, but Jai Herbert did this a lot. He's seen it against some of the longer, bigger guys, is throwing those big flying knees that they like to throw, right? Topuria is so hunched down in that boxing stance. A lot of these guys are throwing up those knees, just trying to kind of use it as a, you're not going to shoot in and take down on me. Also, it's a little bit like uppercut, right? Just using that knee instead of the uppercut. Oliveira loves the knees, especially out of the clinch. But if you're throwing this at range, he feints you in, you throw the knee, and he comes across with the big right hand over the top. And that's the type of exchange that worries me a little bit in this matchup right here. As you can see, when it comes down to defense, 49% defense for Charles Oliveira. If you actually use the eye test and you don't just look at like numbers and paper and stuff like that, the reality is very clear, man. Charles Oliveira is a very hittable fighter. The thing is, he fights fire with fire. Who's going to be the guy on the front foot here? Because Oliveira says it's definitely going to be him. Ilia Topuria, if you watch his film, actually doesn't always have a problem going on the back foot for extended periods of time. What do you think?
I think at the end of the day, the majority one who's going to take advance on this is going to be Ilia Topuria. I think he's going to be on the front foot more often than not. One of the things I like about Charles Oliveira, he is able to have that chaotic kind of style of fight. Like, he's down to scrap. Very, 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 very willing to let his hands go because of how good his jiu-jitsu is. The problem is especially what we've seen with Topuria, when those exchanges happening, he's usually landing the harder of the shots, causing his opponents to turn, run a little bit, which we've seen Charles do just to try to gain some distance. And that's when the big shots land. That's when the ones that actually hurt you and put you out, those are when those land, because Ilia has a very nice way of keeping that pressure going forward. I think that's what's going to lead him to have it more often than not.
Yeah, man. It's going to be interesting because if you're looking at some actual numbers right here, one of the things that interests me more than anything else is the total on this one. Now, it depends on where you go because I've actually found different numbers in different places, but I'm going to go off of FanDuel. I took all of these numbers for today's program off of FanDuel, and what I'm seeing is 1.5 rounds for the total right here. Over -146, plus 114 for the under on this fight right here. So, of course, these guys are finishers, man. If you take a look at the actual like totals between them two, let me see. I had it written down right here. It's something crazy, man, when it comes down to the amount of finishes that these guys have. I think it's like 45 combined finishes in 61 fights. Like, they finish a ton of fights right here. So if this fight ends early, do you anticipate it being a knockout, it being a submission. I can see Charles Oliveira tying up using that clinch, which he loves to do a lot, finding a back take and grabbing a submission, but I can also see Ilia Topuria with the walk-off shot. What rings more true in your simulations in your mind?
I'm going with the latter, Derek. I'm going with Ilia and the knockout shot. I think especially how we've seen things unfold in the recent history, I think he has a lot of that momentum carrying forward. Big shots coming in, especially when Charles is looking to close that distance. That's when Ilia's going to do the majority of his damage.
Yeah. Pocket exchanges are going to be really dangerous here. You look at the Justin Gaethje fight. You look at a ton of different fights, honestly, man. He throws reckless, and hooks are the thing that he is really averse to, hooks in the pocket. But let me give you a comeback right here. If he keeps the fight standing, I do see a path to victory for Charles Oliveira, the same one that Jai Herbert exploited, the same one that Max Holloway attempted to exploit, which is going to be the countering of the right hand of Ilia Topuria right here. When he loads up, because that's the one problem with Ilia Topuria's game. I'm not going to say the one problem, one of many problems, because they're all flawed fighters, but he really likes to load up on those combos when he finds his read. And given he's shorter and doesn't have a jab, a lot of leaping Mike Tyson-esque kind of like getting in there, right? He throws that right hook, expect that left high kick over the top, the same way that Max Holloway threw it a million times, the same way that Jai Herbert connected with it. We just got to see. In a situation with Charles Oliveira, normally it's not the I'm gonna hurt you and then just try to swarm you with punches. It's more of I'm gonna hurt you, take your back, and choke you. I think that it's gonna be a very interesting main event right here. But what are some betting angles that you like right here? Last time that I clocked it, Ilia Topuria by KO was minus 150 right here. Where's the juice here, brother?
Where's the juice? I think the biggest juice, if you're a Topuria better, right? And I think this is one of the more unlikely ways this fight goes. I think a finish is happening right here, but if you're an Ilia Topuria, you take the over, right? You take the over. You take if he's at plus 650 by points. So that the numbers I'm looking at, find them on your own sports book, folks. But plus 650, I mean, there's a lot of that to happen. But a finish is so likely right here. You have a minus 175 TK or minus 150, like you said, Derek, TKO prop for Ilia. There's a lot of not juice happening with the minus 500 favorite as well.
Yeah. The way that I see it right here, I'm going to go Ilia Topuria in this one. I think that the power is going to be a little too overwhelming. Technique will be a little bit too sharp. I like him by knockout, but I am going to be taking over 1.5 rounds right here. I think the knockout comes over that total. What's your play on it?
Exact same, Derek. I think this one ends in a finish. I'm going Ilia Topuria. Like the knockout, not taking it to those odds. So like you said, I like the over, especially at 1.5. The fight can end early, but I think with how good these fighters are, they're going to be making reads until the chaos really starts happening.
All right, that's fair. Quick legacy talk before we jump into the next championship bout right here. Ilia Topuria wins the championship. There's talks that if Islam Makhachev can handle business in the welterweight division, if he can dethrone Jack Della Maddalena, he potentially might come back down to 155. Let's not forget, this was the fight that we originally wanted to see. It was Makhachev, Topuria, but a couple of things need to be answered before then. Legacy-wise right here, is that the biggest fight that you could possibly make in the UFC now that John Jones is no longer in the UFC picture, now that he is retired?
Absolutely. I mean, it is hard to disagree the fact that the sport changed when Habib and the rest of the Dagestanis came over. Nonetheless, they changed the perspective on how things are, but they changed how fights are actually getting done in the UFC. Different styles happening. Now the predecessor, right, Islam, who arguably is more fan appealing, right? He's not as much of a good guy. Now you're going up against Ilia Topuria, who's an absolute goat killer. If he's able to get past Charles, biggest fight in the UFC, hands down.
All right, that's fair. On to the next, folks. Flyweight championship right here. Coincidentally enough, a rematch. We've been talking about it for a while, man. Alexandre Pantoja is pulling a Mighty Mouse to a degree. Let's take a step back because that's a kind of a crazy thing to say, but he's cleaning out the division, right? There's not a lot of new opportunity, new contenders for him to fight, and we are pulling out a guy who he has not fought yet, but technically he actually already has, because this was in the Ultimate Fighter 24 almost 10 years ago. But yeah, Kai Kara France, the Alexandre Pantoja called him the Mike Tyson of the flyweight division. I think that's a little bit of a bold claim, but I think you got to build a fight and you need to build up your competitor as well. The man cracks. He can hit hard. For a flyweight, he can hit hard. He's got a lot of first round knockouts and you love to see that. But Alexandre Pantoja has been an indomitable force, AJ. He is a guy that walks through punches, plays his game, and I feel like is really truly underappreciated as a champion, given that they call him boring because his grappling heavy style, but he walks through the fire to get to his grappling and finishes a lot of the times. Yeah, in against Brandon Moreno, against Brandon Royval and Steve Erceg, you had decisions, right? But you put them in danger. He finished Kai Asakura in the second round. He submitted Alex Perez. He submitted Brandon Royval the first time that they fought, but the whole entire point here is he has this like bite down on your mouthpiece, walk forward and be relentless right here. Can he do that against Kai Kara France? Because I will remind you, if you don't remember, their original fight on Tough 24, it was only a 2-round fight because it was the Ultimate Fighter, but it did go to a decision. What do you think?
I think is going to be one of the harder opponents for him to walk through, because you want to talk about a guy who has a bite down in your mouthpiece, step your foot in the circle and get to it. That's Kai Kara France, man. It's funny that you said hits hard, Derek, because that's literally the first note I have for Kai Kara France. Second note is relentless pressure after he hits you hard. You show an ounce of weakness to Kai Kara France, he is all over you all day long, looking to get that finish going. And somebody who's throwing fire, this is going to be an absolute one. If Pantoja is able to walk through the fire, man, he's going through some absolute heat right here, because Kai Kara France is not one to be trifled with.
Now, who has Kai Kara France beat, that has really impressed you? Because he did take a pretty big layoff, some concussion issues, I do believe, after that split decision loss to Amir Albazi. He knocked out Steve Erceg, and that was the thing that put him on the map, because Steve Erceg, even though he was kind of rushed up the ladder a little bit, if you will, with some impressive performances, that knockout alone pretty much catapulted him into being able to get a title shot, which if you actually like look back on it and you look at the trajectory, I think that he's been denied his opportunity many times. So this was kind of like you've had it coming type situation. But 2 losses back to back, one where you got finished against Brandon Moreno, and then, you know, you lost to Amir Albazi, and then 1 knockout getting you back into title contention. I think it might be a little bit of what have you done for me lately instead of full body of work. What win has really impressed you from Kai Kara France?
I mean, it's hard not to be impressed by the Steve Erceg fight, Derek. But if you go back and look, the names that Kai Kara France has been fighting, a lot of those wins, a lot of the fighters that aren't here in the UFC anymore. But there's one that stands out big, Cody Garbrandt. We saw him fight last weekend, the weekend before, forget when it was, but that's a name, and especially at that time period that he was fighting. First round knockout on Cody Garbrandt, that is a hell of a name to get going. And I do think because Kai Kara France is a company man, those losses don't really affect him as much as it does other people, but that's one that stands out to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, that win over Cody Garbrandt has aged very poorly based on Cody Garbrandt's recent run, right? A lot of knockout finishes. It looks like the drop-off after the Cruz fight just kind of went downhill pretty quick. But I will say he has a win over Tyson Nam, no longer in the UFC. Rogerio Bontorin, no longer in the UFC. Askar Askarov, no longer in the UFC. And then losses to Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno again, and then Amir Albazi, which are pretty much all people that Alexandre Pantoja has already defeated, except for Amir Albazi. He hasn't gotten his opportunity. So enter the odds. -230 is the favorite for Pantoja, +195 comeback for Don't Bleak, Kai Kara France. And the question when it comes down to game plan right here, I think that Kai Kara France needs to not respect Pantoja, and it's hard when you fought this man before. But the one thing that I've noticed about Kai Kara France's game, and I want your opinion on this, is once he gets taken down and controlled for a little bit, and he knows that that's a possibility, his output drops tremendously, right? It's almost like that thought of like, if I open up too much, I'm going to end up right back there, and I don't want to end up there. I don't want to get choked. It's the guy who has really good takedown defense and submission defense, but again, you can't win a fight if you're not throwing. You can't knock the dude out if you're not throwing. How do you see it?
And if you're throwing too much, that's when you get taken down. So yeah, so that Kai Kara France is in the striker's paradox, because the only way you're going to win this fight is by putting some output out there. And what happens when you put output against a guy who's just walking through it, that indomitable spirit you have, that power you know you can crack with, starts to get a little bit questionable. Then you start to play the technique game. Then you really start to lose who you are as a fighter. So I agree with you. If Kai Kara France is able to not worry about what Pantoja is going to do, he can have really good success. But yeah, if one takedown happens, one control happens, we have seen Kai Kara France output drop dramatically. He can't do that in a title fight going forward, man, because this is 5 rounds, and if you're just getting dominated all 5 rounds, it's not going to be a good look. But if he's able to have, I put it as frantic. Right, frantic pressure, or like not necessarily pressure so much, but just if he's able to disregard what's happening on the other side of the line and just go at what he needs to do frantically, chaotically with not necessarily reckless abandonment, but full go, I think France has a good option to be able to win these fights.
He definitely has the opportunity, and when I pull up some of the numbers right here, you're going to see, man, 12 knockouts for Kai Kara-France. It looks awesome. If you look at just on paper right here, Pantoja, yeah, you got seven fight win streak right here. We already talked about a little bit of the record recap on here, but the thing that's the most important is if you just look at totals right here, fantastic defense across the board. Accuracy isn't incredible. That's kind of one of the problems right here. And when it comes down to a frame type thing and statistics, just numbers right here, AJ, let's not forget, 35 years old is Alexandre Pantoja. So you do have to question. This is one of my biggest questions is how long can he keep this up? At the lower weight classes, 33 and up, I believe, is already like a recipe for disaster right here. So 35. At one point, the drop-off is going to happen, and it's going to happen fast, and it's going to happen really drastically right here. But until then, I think that it's going to be a battle, when, especially if it stays on the feet right here. Alexandre Pantoja is going to keep blasting leg kicks like he always does. He's going to be able to walk forward with a reckless abandon. Kai Kara-France, similar to the last fight right here, is going to have his moments right here. I see the biggest chance for victory for Kai Kara-France is if Alexandre just relies on the chin too much and just gets cracked and it finally dissipates this time. Aside from that, do you see any other real just like, oh, I'm going to put him in a striking clinic without the fear of Alexandre Pantoja is going to take you down at some point. He is going to get to your back and you're going to have to spend the remainder of the round fighting that.
Yeah, no, that is fact, Derick. Absolutely, Pantoja is going to get this fight grounded at some point. It's how Kai Kara-France starts the next round going forward. But to be frank with you, I don't think there's any other way that Kai Kara-France get this done. Like a striking clinic, Pantoja is an animal that possesses a different kind of problem whenever you're in trying to strike technical with him, because he can do that. But then every shot you throw, he's just eating it. So I do believe if Kai Kara-France wants to do this, he needs to put his nickname to an actual work. Don't blink. Keep things going. And as fast as possible, just have Alex Pantoja be as uncomfortable as possible in those first couple rounds. That's where you're going to get the majority of your work done. And like you said, if he can crack him, put him to sleep, 35 years old, if Kai Kara-France is able to get lucky with that timing, right, that moment, the stars might align, and this could be the downfall that Pantoja has been trying to avoid in his last 7 fights.
Absolutely. I will say Kai Kara-France does have one set of kryptonite right here. It is the submission loss, 3 losses by submission, 3 losses by TKO. And when he fought Brandon Royval, who we'll talk about here in a second, he was winning the fight, man, but he got caught in the gilly. And that's all it takes right here is just one of those opportunities. So you go ahead and you go first right here from a betting perspective. What are the plays? How are you seeing it? And who are you going with?
Bet right here, Derick, I'm rocking Pantoja. I'm actually going with submission, Derick. I think it can happen again because of how dangerous Kai Kara-France, or how much danger Kai Kara-France is going to have to put himself in. Right now, the odds, at least I'm looking at, are plus 210 for the submission. If you're going Pantoja, plus money, very likely outcome. I like it. Who are you rocking with?
I like Pantoja right here. I am stuck between a rock and a hard place, whether I'm going submission or decision. The over for the total is 4.5, minus 110 for the over, minus 116 for the under right now. And we know one thing that we didn't talk about here, but Kai Kara-France does have a little bit of a cardio drop-off in the later rounds. Pantoja might look dog-tired, but he just wills himself through it time and time again. I don't know if the man can get tired. He's kind of machine-esque here. So I'm going to give Kai Kara-France the benefit of the doubt in this one, and I'm going to take the over on the totals, 4.5. I'm going to go Pantoja by decision. Another defense to the illustrious flyweight championship that he holds right here, and then I think people are going to hate him even more after it. So we'll see what happens, but that's the fight right there. And still, all right, man, let's move on over to a short notice bout right here, but a fun one nonetheless. Brandon Royval, he loses his opponent, Manel Kopp, and in 3 weeks' time, Josh Van, we already talked about it, he stepped up. He says, I want to call my shot. I want to put myself in title contention, and how can I do it? That's by fighting the best. Otherwise, I would have had to fight 5 other fights just to maybe get a shot at the #1 contender. But now you stepped in, you were a company man, and you kind of played the Donald Cerrone role right here. AJ, the raw dog, Brandon Royval, he's tall, he's lanky. We say it every single time. People are overhearing that talk right here. He believes that he is the most disrespected flyweight on the roster from an odds perspective, from a betting perspective, and just from a fan appreciation perspective right here. AJ, let me pull up what the current line is right now, because I need just your honest take right here. Okay, All right, the line has evened back out. Minus 115, Josh Van is in the driver's seat. He is a favorite. Minus 105 comeback for Brandon Royval, depending on your book. If you go to FanDuel, Josh Van minus 130, Brandon Royval plus 102. So for the people who like the live dogs right there, there's still an opportunity. But talk to us, brother. How do you see this?
Yeah, I agree with what Brandon Royval is saying, Derek. He is one of the most disrespected fighters in the flyweight division. As much as Uncle Dana loves him, much as the brass loves him, likes to put him in crazy fun fights and look to give this man a shot at the title, you just can't seem to get a lot of respect going on in the rest of everything else in his career. This fight, man, this fight's going to be very, very fun. It's reminiscent to the one we were talking about last week where they got the double payout, not Paziv,
Sadikov and Mota.
Sadikov. Thank you, Derek. This has all the makings for that exact same fun fight, right? Josh Van, dude's an animal, fast hands, solid boxing, down to scrap, right? Same thing with Brandon Royval. He has all of his own skill sets, likes to crash in, use counters, take the fight wherever he feels comfortable, has all the tools in the tool belt, and most importantly, homeboy is game. And that's what I think is going to make this fight so exciting is both guys are very, very willing, more than willing. They're open and engaged to be able to have that dogfight. That's what makes this fight very exciting for me.
Why don't you think that Brandon Royval gets the respect, especially against a boxer-puncher like Josh Van right here? Technically, from a film perspective, like what aren't people seeing or what are people seeing that are saying, oh, bro, Van's coming in with the knockout?
I don't necessarily know if it's a lot in what Van's going to do, Derek. I think it's a lot of what Brandon Royval has done previously, right, in his past fights. Like, a lot of the people are excited to see a prospect come up, right, when he is, and he's steamrolling people. You get a couple big-name fights. You don't really, you falter a little bit. I know there was a couple injuries in the past. Like, things have happened where Brandon Royval has lost that trajectory. And I think a lot of people, because of that, are what have you done for me lately mindset, and they've kind of forgotten what Brandon Royval is, and Josh Van is the new shiny toy. This dude has slick boxing, hits with power. There's a lot of advantages that Josh Van has that I think a lot more people like to see instead of a grappling style approach that we've seen Brandon Royval take.
You know, one thing it's interesting to me, AJ, I have to just at least announce it because we are in this, if you put enough tape out there, man, people just remember, we have such a short attention span, people just remember what happened last week, you know, or the week before at maximum, right? But I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and we're going to see right here, man, if you look at just the tail of the tape, or maybe I shouldn't say tail of the tape, but the last couple of fights right here, Brandon Royval, man, again, there's some big names on here, and then there's some guys who maybe, you know, aren't the most impressive, but if you look at his hit list, man, you see some impressive names, Kai France, Moreno, Pantoja, again, no longer in the UFC. Matt Schnell, Nicolau, no longer in the UFC. Pantoja again, Moreno, Tatsuro Taira, impressive stuff right here. Some good names for Josh Van as well. Bunez, Charles Johnson, where you got knocked out, but people completely forget about that. Saruya, Silva, Edgar Chairez, like some good names. August Zumagulov, no longer in the UFC. But the point is this. You got knocked out by Charles Johnson in the third round of your fight, but you're an up-and-comer. It's expected. You were still really, he was a big favorite. People are still really excited about you. Awesome. The next fight against Edgar Chairez, you almost get knocked out again in that fight. Blood and guts, back and forth battle, decision victory. You beat Durden, decision victory. Saruya, decision victory. And then finally Bruno Silva. It was one-way traffic and you got the finish in the third round. The only reason why I bring this up is because people are looking at Josh Van and they're seeing this last knockout and they're like, oh yeah, he just knocks everybody out. This dude's just going to come in and just knock out Brandon Royval immediately. And I'm looking at it like, where are all of these knockouts that we speak of right here? Like, yeah, he's a fantastic boxer puncher. 7 knockout wins, 2 submission wins, 5 decision victories. But Brandon Royval, he can do it all too. 4 knockouts, 9 submissions, and that's really where I want your opinion on next right here. When we're talking about the grappling game of Brandon Royval, I just think he's a little bit more of an evolved fighter right here. Van's experience is very quickly catching up, but when it comes down to the evolution of if he hurts you and he jumps on a front choke, he is incredibly dangerous with jumping a guillotine, with putting you in a triangle, with 6 scrambles and grappling from that perspective. Josh Van has sick takedown defense, but do you think he has the grappling acumen at this stage of his career to fend on some of the Beneil Dariush-esque scramble capacities that Brandon Royval has?
And no offense to Josh Van, but not at all. Definitely not at all at this moment, that's for sure. Still young in his career, right? Josh Van can still have the ability to grow in that aspect. But Brandon Royval, I mean, we just saw the names, even the people he lost to, right? And that's almost more important of a teaching moment for a fighter going forward. Brandon Royval has lost to some of the greats still doing it. There's so much more that he has to bring to the table than Josh Van has even seen. So I think right there, it's just not gonna be on the same level, even close, when we start the grappling offensive. And even in the striking, Derek, you're talking about an evolved fighter that Brandon Royval is. Dude is slick, right? Uses kicks at range, gets on the inside, does some damage. But what I like most about him is he is able to not only evolve his game over years, it's in the fight. Wherever he sees himself being most comfortable in, that's where Brandon Royval is going to take this fight, and that's where I think he's going to drag Josh Van around. Maybe submission, maybe a decision, but I do see this one being more lending in the favor of Brandon Royval.
That's right. And when I take a look at some of those past fights, that he had right here, I just think that Josh Van he's improving at a compound rate. Like, I think giving him a couple more fights, man. And this fight right here, win or loss, is going to take him to where he needs to be. But from a betting perspective right here, I just see a ton of value on Brandon Royval. Now, all of this can completely go out the window because Brandon Royval does like to stay in your face with his hand down, and a solid cross hook combination from Josh Van, which he excels at, can absolutely end this fight. I mean, Kai Kara-France dropped him. You remember he came back with a spinning elbow. If that spinning elbow wasn't there, maybe he would have got finished right there, and that was all she wrote. Like, that's the thing. Brandon Royval could pull out some of this rabbit out the hat type stuff, but a boxer puncher like Josh Van, you do have to be worried about. The other thing here too, 3 weeks notice on a full camp, I think it's a little bit of a different story. But what do you think about Josh Van? Says 3 weeks is plenty of time, bro. This ain't short notice. I'm good to go. What do you think about that?
Wild, man. I mean, he's always training, but if you can get 3 weeks of solid tape study in on exactly some of the tendencies your opponent's doing, you better pay your coach 80-90% of your purse, because that's the only reason you won that fight. 3 weeks is a very short time to get ready for an opponent.
Yeah. We'll see what happens right here. I think some good body work by Josh Van can open up some doors right here. 81% takedown defense. I don't think Royval is going to be shooting takedowns like a D1 wrestler, but I think that on the ground, things might get interesting right here. All right, AJ, the total is at 2.5 rounds, minus 235 for the over, plus 178 for the under right here. So the odds makers are thinking this one may potentially go the distance, or we'll see definitely a late round stoppage if it goes that distance. How do you see it? What are the betting lines? What are the betting plays?
I like the late stoppage, Derek. I can see, especially with the skills. I'm going Brandon Royval, right off the jump. That's who I like in this fight. I think he has more to offer, more tools in the tool belt, like we saying, more opportunities to present himself a win. As much as Josh Van can crack, and I am worried that both fighters are game and dogs and down to end up in a fight, in a dog fight. I think Brandon Royval is a little bit slicker, a little bit smoother. Man, there's a lot of ones right here. Depends on where you get, because if you're getting Brandon Royval at even money on the money line, not the best one. But you can find him on FanDuel, like you said, at plus money. That's the play all day long. But if you're taking one of the props, I think the best one, the most likely one, is going to be that over 2.5. I think that's likely to hit. If there is going to be a finish, it's going to be coming. Well, I guess either one of them can happen. I think it's going to be longer later in the fight. I don't really like the points. I don't like the submission at plus 750. I mean, he can't catch a submission, but there's a lot of plays and a lot of different ways to go at it. What do you think, Derek?
I see this one pretty straight and narrow, just because this is a risky play right here. Again, you can't doubt the upside of Josh Van in this one, but I like Brandon Royval anywhere you can get him at plus money. I think it's a very clear play right here. For a totals perspective, I like the over. Again, Josh Van is not some miraculous finisher the way that people are hyping him up to be, and Brandon Royval, I think, will have his work cut out for him with a dangerous boxer puncher. I keep repeating it because the man is good at what he does right there. So I like Brandon Royval money line. I think that that's a safe play, and I want to give a word of advice to the Josh Van bettors. If you do want to go the Josh Van route, I would not throw him in a parlay. I would keep that as a single bet if you're going to go that route. But that's going to be a really interesting matchup right here for the trajectory of the flyweight division. In just like a fan perspective, just from like I want to see cool, exciting things happen, you want to see Josh Van win, because that's the biggest shakeup that you can have. Like, that's the cool thing. That's the movie ending type situation. But we're here to make money, and it's a little bit of a different perspective right there. All right, AJ, this one got pushed down the ladder a little bit, but this is a rebooking. Benny Dariush, he fights Money Moicano, Renato Moicano, in a lightweight bout right here. And just about everybody has written off Dariush, man. You're coming off of back-to-back knockout losses for the first time in your career. And all of a sudden, Renato Moicano has become a favorite over a man who was a perennial top 10 fighter, a man who some were saying can give Islam Makhachev a real run for his money. But yeah, you get knocked out by Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira back to back, and history has rewritten itself. The first thing that I want to talk to you about right here is Moicano's claim that Benny Dariush responded to. He says, Moicano says, I think I have a better half guard top game than Dariush, and Dariush is probably a little bit better on the bottom. His bottom game is really good, pause, but we will cancel each other out, and this could be a striking affair right here. What are your thoughts on that?
That's exactly what I was thinking, Derek. I mean, we've seen it all the time. Fire versus fire. We're ending up in a fire fight, right? Like what they were standing. If they got two great ground grapplers going forward, even if one is a great top, one is a great bottom, like Derek said, pause. But if their styles are intertwined in that way, more often than not, we end in a stalemate. Round 2 starts and those hands start flying, and you're trying to find any moment, any position at all where you have the advantage. And that's what both of these guys are going to do. I'm excited to see it because we've seen, especially with Benny Dariush, he's very much, at least in when he is doing what he does best. He's a snowball fighter, right? Takes a little bit to warm up. Once the ball gets going, man, this guy is all pressure, hits you hard, and even sometimes you can crack him with all you got. You think he's out, he's coming back and does the most damage at that point. Like we all love Benny Dariush, and it's time a lot more people remember how good he is. This is a good moment, especially with 2 older fighters, or at least fighters who are more aged in their UFC career, to really put it all out there, show people who you are. I mean, Money Moicano, he's seen a lot, done a lot, and this is another one to really make a stake in the claim that I'm not necessarily here for gold or anything like that. I'm here to get paid and make some money. This is a money fight for both of these fighters right here if they take that opportunity.
I do agree. I'm going to give my own little bit of pushback to those claims right here. I don't think that Moicano is better in his top control game than Benny Dariush. I actually do think overall, when it comes down to grappling, I think Dariush is by far the better fighter in every regard, in the scrambles, in the jiu-jitsu positions, in the top control wrestling positions. I think he's better. And I think all you have to do is watch 2 fights to kind of make it very clear. If you watch the Gamrot fight, that's all that you need to see. I know that was 3 years ago, it was 2022, but that was some of the highest level scrambles, grappling, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu transitions that you will see in the game right here. It was actually, I mean, Arman Tsarukyan versus Gamrot, similar, right? It was of that cloth right there. Now, AJ, I don't know if you dug back this far, but again, 2022, Renato Moicano, that was actually the last loss before he went on his 4-fight streak. He lost to RDA, and he got manhandled in that fight right there. RDA put a wrestling clinic on him like we've known RDA to do, and yeah, he was stuck in bottom side control, bottom half guard for long bouts of time in those fights right here. So when it goes to show me that Dariush, if he decides to implement his own top control half guard game right there, I don't know if Moicano is going to be able to get up. But that's the thing. I think if Dariush ends up in that same position, he can scramble, he can use heel hooks, leg locks to be able to force the action to get back up to the feet at worst. So I think that there's a little bit of a narrative discrepancy just from the jiu-jitsu that I've watched personally, but I'm curious to know on the feet, because that's my own take just on the jiu-jitsu portion. On the feet, who's the cleaner striker right here, in your opinion?
Cleaner striker would actually be Dariush, Derek. The more technical, the 1s and 2s down the pipe, the patience to see things and read things, I think that all goes to Dariush. The one thing Moicano has on the striking is that X factor, is that explosiveness, is that wild card style we've seen him throw. Sometimes, man, he just gets crazy and throwing things at different angles that you're not really used to seeing, and that's when Benny can be a little bit overwhelmed. So with the pressure Moicano presents, the what's the word? Not unethical, but like a different style of striking that Moicano is able to provide. I think that chaos that he has is going to be the X factor and what makes him not necessarily a better striker, but a more effective striker at times.
Yeah, it's unorthodox striking right there. But I think it's interesting, man. I think we have 2 completely opposite reads here, because I anticipated you saying Moicano a little bit of the cleaner striker, because Dariush, while I agree when he's like fresh in the zone, yes. But the moment the man gets a little tired or gets a little crazy and feeds into the firefight, that's when I'm like, yo, you got the nuttiest striking I have ever seen. That's when hands drop down completely. Yeah, like the Jakar Close fight where it's just rock'em sock'em robots type situation right there. So I do see the path for takedowns, the same path that RDA exploited on Moicano, where Moicano throws that 1-2 with the big explosion. He just ducks under, gets to the hips and takes him down. I can see that there. Otherwise, I can see Dariush getting into the rock'em sock'em talking robots and Moicano being able to put him down. The only thing is, just like Charles Oliveira, because if you remember, the bad knockout was Arman Sarukian. Catching that knee, already being out, and then getting hammer-fisted on the ground, like, that was bad. But Charles Oliveira, he caught him. He was able to avoid getting his back taken and then just got ground and pound finish, and the referee just called it off. But I don't think it was like I was already knocked out and getting my face smashed in right here. So when he's hurt, he still scrambles like the best of them. I think that Benny Dariush has been written off, and I'm going to take another stab at the old man. Only one old man can prevail in the UFC right now, even though it looks like they're both 36 now, I believe, or at least one's 36 and 135. But I like Benny Dariush right here. Again, I'm going to go pure money line, and over 2.5 rounds is the 2.5 rounds is the total. So I want to know, who do you got and what do you like for the rounds right here? I like Dariush money line.
I like Moicano, Derek. I'm actually also taking money line. There was an interesting one, and I'm looking at the ESPN numbers right now. It's on ESPN. Money line's both -100. So if you can find either fighter, whichever one you're tailing, you can find some plus money on there. There's a way to go. But I like Benil Dariush for the over style of fight. Well, no, he gets a little tired. There's a lot that could go on. I'm interested because they have even money on the money line over here on ESPN. But by points, Dariush has a better decision odd right there at +240, where the comeback's coming at +300 for Moicano. I'm not sure I agree necessarily with that, but I do think Moicano has a better chance to finish this one in a unexpected way. But Benny Dariush finishes, he's just taking over, ground and pound, could make his way to a decision, beat that up. But I do think Moicano, I'm rocking with him. I'm also rocking with money line over 2.5. I like it, but I think that favors Moicano a little bit more.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm undecided on the totals right there, but I'm going to give you the dog play right here. Slightest of dogs. Again, AJ, like you said, you can find different numbers. I'm seeing Bet Online, even money, DraftKings, -115, Moicano, -105, Dariush, and then again, FanDuel, which is where I'm pulling the numbers for this one, -122, Moicano, -104 for Dariush. So if you can get them at those numbers, I would bet that. I would even live bet it if things start to get a little tricky in the first round right here. That's going to be an interesting one. But all right, folks, on to the next one that was relegated to the prelims, but somehow has resurfaced back onto the main card. AJ, Peyton Talbott, all the rage just a couple of, months ago, man. He fights Felipe Lima. They fed him to the dogs. He got Hayoni Barcelos, where he was like a -1,000 favorite, something ridiculous. Yeah, you got steamrolled right there. Steamrolled is a little bit harsh. You got wrestled up in that fight right there. He was still swinging with the best of them all 3 rounds, demoralized or not. He was trying to take the man's head off, and you have to respect that. But now you give him the Jungle Boy. You give him Felipe Lima, a man who I have very, very high praise for, a very sick Brazilian, trains with Hamzat Chimaev, got some of that Swedish love over there. But the point is this is not an easy fight right here, and we went from being a dude who was a -1,000 favorite to Felipe Lima, -195 favorite, +150 comeback for Peyton Talbott. The fall off comes quick. This is a what have you done for me lately spot. Do you think that this is an exploitation spot for people to make some money here on Peyton Talbott?
I do, Derek. As much as I agree with you, I think this is one of the not necessarily harder fights that Peyton Talbott's going to have, but stylistically, it's going to bring back a lot of the PTSD of him getting his first loss last time, right? Felipe Lima is going to get this fight to the ground. He is going to try to beat him up and dominate him and control him. Peyton Talbott has to have show how he can evolve his game just in a quick, short couple months, right? If it's a rinse, wash, repeat of last time, you can expect a +300, +400 coming for Peyton Talbott next time. But I agree with you. I wouldn't say he got absolutely steamrolled in his last fight. Wasn't necessarily a fraud check. More proof that sometimes anything can happen in this game, and sometimes you can't fall for the hype, right? Everybody was so high on Peyton Talbott. You got to realize people can get taken down, drug around. That's what Felipe Lima is going to do again. This one's an exciting one, Derek. I was actually back and forth so many times between these two fighters because on that day or on the night of the fight, whoever's feeling might of the vibe, we talk about all the time, whoever's in that zone, gets into their bag first, is going to be able to take over and dominate this fight. If you get standing, you get Peyton Talbott, he's able to piece you up with the 1s and 2s, throw some flying or some spinning shit in there, hit you with kicks at range, not let you get that takedown. When you do shoot one, you eat a knee. Like, there's a lot of things that Peyton Talbott is good at. He just can't get taken down and controlled.
And when I bring up the numbers right here, man, impressive on both ends of the spectrum right here. Again, it looks like Lima is a pure grappler, more or less, even though he has some knockout victories right here. Of course, we already know the story about Peyton Talbott, very slick, talented striker with a lot of power. A lot of power. One shot, Sean O'Malley-esque power, some would say right here. The thing that I think is a little bit interesting is just the last couple of fights right here. Even though he only had one fight in Octagon, it is the biggest promotion in Europe for mixed martial arts. He was a champion in 2023, and then immediately came on over to the UFC, got a submission victory again. This was a short notice fight, third round submission, huge upset over Muhammad Naimov, and then you decision Miles Johns. AJ, talk to me about how impressive that is, because realistically, Naimov he's found himself to be a really, really good fighter so far in his young run. But Miles Johns, that victory right there to like kind of unanimous decision, the wrestling dude, the dude who is going to nullify your game, to be able to do that goes to show you're not just out grappling like solid, decent, like that guy is good. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, Derek. No, that was the moment I realized that if there is going to be a rinse wash repeat of this fight, it's going to be because Felipe Lima took control, took the driver's seat and really started to get to work. We saw what he can do, and if you can go 3 rounds in a crazy pace wrestling match with Miles Johns, Felipe Lima can do that to somebody who doesn't have, or who at least was exposed in his lack of ground game going forward. Very worrisome. I think the pressure and the strength, even though Payton Talbott has the size advantage in this one, the strength that Lima packs into his frame can sometimes get people weary of what's going to happen, and then that's when your game really starts to fall apart.
Yeah, man. I mean, a couple of danger zones right here. It's going to be those like body lock spots where Felipe Lima can exploit Talbot on, especially just giving up the back. That's the biggest thing. If he gives up his back, it's going to be some issues right there. And the other side right there is, I think, the first 2 minutes of every single round, Lima is going to be in incredible danger if he cannot get to the hips. Because one thing I like about Lima is just the aggressive nature. Some dudes got it. Some dudes are patient. Like Talbot strikes me as the guy that comes out and he's just relaxed, ready to, find his spots, find that timing, get into the flow state. And Lima's like, I'm amped up. I done had 50 monsters. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get to the hips, and I don't care. Whatever is in front of me, I'm steamrolling, which can be good and can be bad because you're so tense, you're so tight, you can get caught really easily that way. Even though we have only seen him lose one time, it has been by submission. Payton Talbot's never been finished either, which you got to give props to not get submitted by Raoni Barcelos in that one. But yeah, I think this is a pretty binary matchup right here. I think that the reach and the height disadvantage for Lima is going to pose some problems on the feet, but I'm going to personally say I don't have too much on this. I think he's going to be able to get to his spots when it comes to a grappling perspective. I don't know if it'll be a rinse, wash, repeat, but I do like Lima here. The question is methodology and totals. So how are you seeing this?
Yeah, Derek, I'm actually taking the opposite. I'm going Payton Talbot. I'm putting some faith in the young gun that his game has evolved going forward. I like him at money line right now. I'm looking at a plus 155 over here on ESPN. But I mean, the TKOs on the gameplay, decisions on the gameplay. One of the things I like most about what Payton Talbot does, especially when he has that forward pressure style of fighter like you're talking about, that 1-2 is one of the stiffest we've seen in the UFC. And they're both on pistons, they're both on a rope, and when some guy's coming forward at you nonstop, nothing better than a 1-2 down the pipe, get his nose bloody a little bit. Next thing you know, he's not seeing you. So I like Payton Talbot. I'm actually, Derek, I'm going with the decision. I think, money line, money line. But if you have to pick a play, I like the decision. I do think that's the way this fight's going to go, with a little bit of extended back and forth draws between them both. What are you going?
Yeah. I'm going to go Lima here, man. And I'm going to go nuts, man. Give me a submission victory for Lima right here, man. He said something in the press conference, the MMA Junkie press conference, that to me you can't take too much out of, but it's a little subconscious thing in my opinion when I saw it right here, where he was all like, yeah, I'm coming out there and I'm going to submit him, or I'm going to knock him out or decision him. But for him to say submit first, for that to be the first thing that comes out of your mouth, subconsciously, I think that's I'm going to get this guy down. I'm going to choke this man. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go submission right here for the Jungle Boy right here. And then, if you're taking the over and the under, it's 2.5. I'm going to take the under, plus 150 for the under right here. But the odds makers do have the over as the favorite, clocked in at minus 192 right there. So, folks, that is your main card breakdown for UFC 317 International Fight Week. And we got to move on to another money-making portion of the program right here. Before we do it, if you have not liked, subscribed, all that fun stuff, make sure that you take a moment to do that. This is your favorite fighter's favorite fight show. But AJ, it's the Sharp Corner pick of the week. We went down the entire main card. We gave our plays, we talked totals, but now we got one opportunity, one shot right here to make a real splash and to make some people some money. You kick it off right here. What is your Sharp Corner pick of the week?
Folks, we talked about it before, and if you were paying attention, you probably caught it because it was the one Derick and I were both saying is the play most likely to hit. I'm rocking Brandon Royval money line, and when I got this in, I was at plus 100. So, folks, make sure you jump on this. This is one of those fights where people are going to be back and forth. So watch those lines. If you can get Brandon Royval at money line at plus money, that is a play right here, right? We got a crafty veteran at plus money odds. Like, this is here all day, right? Many ways this fight can end, like we were talking about. That's why the money line makes the most sense. I'm not going to keep going into detail about it because we broke it down in the main card. But like I said, make sure you get your money on this one. Pay attention to how those lines are working. Plus money's on the line right here, folks.
Act fast because this deal will not last forever. I'm going to go a little chalky on this one, but I'm going to go chalky because I think that I'm confident, and this could come back to bite me, but I am confident enough that this line should be way heavier than it is. I'm going Jonata Janice right here, knockout over Alvin Hines, I believe, AJ. Hold on, let me pull this up. Alvin Hines right here, UFC debutant right here. Short notice, heavyweight bout, and we all know what the state of the heavyweight division has been as of late. I went and watched Alvin Hines' last fight, and I was not impressed. Did not look UFC level. I'm not saying that he's not a talented fighter, but against a Glory Kickboxing stud in Janice right here, whose only problem has been, kind of some of the takedown type stuff right here. Hines is looking to come in and exploit that. But everything else on the feet, I saw nothing that should be hanging in there with Jonata Janice for 15 straight minutes. So I like the knockout, minus 145, FanDuel prop right here. This is it, man. I think it should be one-way traffic on paper. 7 of his 8 MMA wins are by knockout right here. So, I mean, come on. I don't really got too much for you. Again, go watch the tape. Go watch Alvin Hines and tell me what you think. But he's one of the 6 fighters coming in with an undefeated record, young in his career, just like Janice, still young in his career. And the only other thing is that Hines is he's very hittable, and he's going to sell out for the takedown. So don't get me wrong. He could take down Janice, and this can be a little bit of a different fight than anticipated. But that's not going to say as much about Hines as it will say about what we think Janice is. If he's anything that we think that he is thus far, knockout isn't coming. That is your sharp corner pick of the week. All right, so now that we got that one out the way here, the perfect way to close out today's program is by the storyline of the week. I quickly mentioned it earlier, but I think we have to take a step back, and it doesn't matter all the memes, all the jokes, the public sentiment, the controversial criminal charges. Jon Jones has called it quits in his UFC tenure. I'm going to be very specific about that. Not MMA tenure, but he did specifically say, I am calling it a wrap with the UFC. Now, AJ, we, I think, have learned one thing covering this sport over the last few years, and it's that you never believe when someone says that they retire. Who knows? It doesn't matter if they come back and do bare knuckle boxing or a celebrity boxing match or something. Fighting is never really out of the picture for these guys. But Jon Jones and his illustrious career is being marred in controversy in his retirement because people are calling him not Johnny Bones Jones, but John the Duck Jones for his refusal to fight Tom Aspinall, the interim champion, dude, for 2 years. 2 years, interim heavyweight champion. Jon Jones said, I don't want to fight you because I don't like you. What are your thoughts on the man's retirement? I have some hit list victories I want to rattle off and some stats. But before that, what do you think about the ending of his career, how it's gone from a narrative perspective?
Not how you would have seen it on when he started his career. How you would have expected it about 4 or 5 years ago in the middle of his career, things going on with him. It's sad to see. I mean, you hate to see any fighter end up in legal trouble, but it kind of, and take this as hate if you will, Derick, but you kind of saw, expected it to happen when Jon Jones is living the life he has. I think DC said it best: it couldn't happen to a worse guy. So this is how things have been going. Like this, the writing's been on the wall. I mean, yeah, you get the duck allegations, things aren't happening. He even changed his Instagram or his X profile to a duck with the championship belt. Jon Jones knows what's going on. There's legal trouble. Doesn't, it just so happened that he retired a couple days before it went and released that he's in now another DUI situation. There's a lot at play. Jon Jones is a master of spinning the narrative in the media into going to how he likes it and how he wants it to be seen. But, I mean, it does have a big mar on his career. And unfortunately, for how great as he is and the things we saw him do in the past, nobody's going to remember anything besides who he is at this exact moment in time.
Well, I'm gonna push back there because I was actually having this conversation with a couple of my buddies at the gym, and they were kind of saying the same thing. They're like, "Dude, everyone hates him. He's gonna go down as not the GOAT." You know what I mean? Yada yada yada. And I was all like, "Right now, yeah, but time is gonna pass, and Father Time is undefeated in the sense where it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what controversies you had. The hardcores will remember, but you're gonna look back on paper." And you're going to be like, damn, this dude, he beat Cyril Gane. He beat Stipe Miocic. He beat Shogun Hua, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Gustafsson twice, Daniel Cormier twice. Yeah, he's the GOAT, dude. You know what I mean? And the reason I say this is because unless I bring it up right now, when I say Floyd Mayweather, 50-0, man, he's one of the best to do it. Most people would say, yeah, you're right. Until you remember his 50th victory was against Conor McGregor. So I don't think that people are going to look at this, especially I think all of this is really dependent on, is Tom Aspinall as good as we think he is? Because if he is, and he goes on a generational run and he never loses, different story entirely. But if he gets a title defense and then gets knocked out, John Jones will be sitting there. You know, he will be on Twitter laughing, being like, oh, this was the guy that you thought, right? Because let's be honest, man, they did kind of say the same thing about Cyril Gane until he went in and submitted him in, a couple minutes, right? They said the same thing about a lot of these guys. They said the same thing about Francis Ngannou. We never got to see that fight, you know? But there's a lot of these guys that we never got to see. Derek Lewis, Jamal Hill, at one point, they were saying Jamal Hill could beat John Jones. So with all of that being said right there, that's the hit list. I'm going to go over a couple of generational stats and records, and then we'll close it out by giving me your final thoughts on this one. So, official record, 28-1. Only loss was that downward elbow that is no longer downward. So, you know, that's that. Holds the UFC record for the most title fight victories with 15. Set the record for the longest unbeaten streak in UFC history at 19 fights. So, not just undefeated record like Khabib, but UFC victories right there. 11 title defenses are the most ever in the celebrated light heavyweight division. 95% takedown defense in his career, which is just phenomenal. Doesn't matter who you are or what you've done. Finished 18 of his opponents. Almost split evenly between knockouts and submissions. And one of only 8 fighters in history to become a champion in 2 different UFC weight classes. So with all of that being said, what is the legacy of John Jones?
You forgot one, Derek. Youngest UFC champion too, also. Yeah. But
there we go.
Damn, he has a lot of accolades. What is the career? What is the legacy of John Jones? I think to a lot of hardcores, and again, I'm jaded. I'm from New Mexico. I love John Jones. He's an absolute porqueño. He might not have been born there, but he does represent the good and the bad of the state, if I'm being completely truthful. But I do think to us hardcores, we're gonna love the fight style of John Jones. We're gonna love the back and forth, especially with the Daniel Cormier stuff. Those are memories that we are gonna cherish and laugh about for quite a long time. I do think to us hardcores, the ducking allegation, the things that didn't necessarily pan out in these last couple of years, I think those are going to go by the wayside. We're going to remember the fun fights. We're also going to remember that he was a bad guy, though. There's no getting away from the fact that John Jones would be labeled as a villain in the UFC. So I do think we're going to remember a lot for there. If you like the villains, you're going to like John Jones. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm a little biased. I'm from New Mexico, so that's why he does represent the state very well. Well as the state is, but I do think his legacy to some will be tarnished, but not to the majority.
Fair. And I think that's a great way to end it right here. Folks, that was your program. Again, UFC 317. Catch us next week for another breakdown. Until next time, peace.